Please don't get your panties in a twist. People will lose their feet. So I don't know if that comes as a surprise to you or not. Let's all just sit around and kumbaya and talk about our feelings. Everybody go to their rooms. I can't think. Just everybody get out of my sight.
Walk me in the morning sun. Tell me I'm lucky.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's Ask Angie. I haven't done one of these in a couple weeks. We've been a little busy. We've had a lot going on. But today we're going to talk about probably one of the most highly requested sort of questions we get is about how we discipline our kid. This is just one of those questions I feel like we get all the time. And I think it's probably because we have a lot of kids. So people just are curious, you know, what do you do and how do you discipline your kids? I'm just going to be really honest with you guys because there's no point in not. And please understand that everybody has different parenting styles, and I think and I'm also sorry, recovering from being sick this last week. My voice is a little manly and I just sound a little not like myself. Different strokes for different folks, okay? I feel like that just needs to be said because whenever you talk about especially parenting related topics, people get very like, ugh, that's not how I do things and my way's better, and we just feel the need to staunchly defend our way of doing things to the point that it ends up offending people who don't do things the same way we do. So let me just put it to you this way. This is just my experience in almost 12 years of being a parent, and I think a couple of things that are really important to note before I dive into like actual this is how we do things. Our discipline style has really evolved and changed over the years. In fact, it's taken almost like a 180 and how we used to discipline to how we discipline now. And also, I think it's super important to note that we have children in our home that are adopted and have come from orphanage situations and you know, some really bad situations. So that's an important piece of sort of how we parent our kids. You know, that really caused us to start really considering how we were doing things and why we were doing things the way that we were and all of that. So anybody who's parented a kid from trauma knows that it just looks a little different. I know there's a lot of adoptive families and people who are considering adoption and stuff. So this is all really important to talk about in light of that. So here we go. That's my disclaimer. Please don't get your panties in a twist. I mean, you can leave me all the comments you want. People do anyways. That's how we do things. I am in no way saying you are a bad parent if you do things differently from us. This is how we do things and sort of the whys behind them. It was a crazy long intro, but I just always feel like I have to put in those like disclaimers and lawyer quid pro quo because people will lose their... Okay, so here we go. So how we discipline our kids. First of all, we try to parent our kids very holistically. We care far more about character development than we do about immediate obedience. This is something that has changed a lot for us over the years. When we just had Kennedy and Shelby when they were babies, we were very much just like, nope, we're the parents, you're the kid, you listen to us, we say you do this and you do it. And you know, I don't know, we didn't have a whole lot to go off of other than the way that we were parented, which was very different. Sierra and I both grew up very differently. One of us kind of grew up with physical discipline, with spankings and things like that, and the other one didn't. So kind of melding those two parenting styles or two experiences into a parenting style was definitely a little difficult in the beginning, trying to understand each other and where the other person was coming from and all of that. The key is that we care far more about our kids' hearts and their minds than we do about, like I said, immediate and direct obedience. And I want you to understand that I'm not saying that we don't expect our kids to obey us, because we absolutely do. So we try really hard to help our kids get a hold of their emotions. I think we live in a world of a lot of adults who don't even understand their own emotions, and we base everything that we do, all of our interactions and everything are based off of like what's in here and what's in here. And so I think that I know my husband and I have been doing a ton of work on ourselves personally to understand why we react the way that we do, why we think the way that we do. Everything from just like I've said before, like I listen to a lot of like life coaching stuff, and I have a podcast I love to listen to called The Life Coach by Brooke Castillo. I will try to leave the link down below if I remember. And she talks a lot about understanding your feelings and how they drive your thoughts and how they drive your actions and all of that. So I like to think about that not just as an adult, but also with my children. The other thing, again, like I said, having kids that are come from traumatic backgrounds in some cases, we really have to consider things in the way that we parent them. There's a really amazing resource called TBRI, and it is a lot of helping you connect with your children. It's far more about connection than it is about discipline. Discipline is such a small piece where the rest of it is about connection and really helping to sort of build a really, really strong bond with your child. Because I think that we just don't give enough grace for the fact that the world is a scary place to small children, and they're just trying to figure it out. And I don't think I think a lot of times people just treat kids like every behavior is just some sort of like wild and crazy act of defiance and disobedience. And then if you don't, sorry, lack of a better term, but like if you don't beat it out of them, then they're going to grow up to be a serial killer or something. I mean, or like a criminal of some kind. And I don't think that's true at all. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on helping kids understand why they feel the way that they do. So that's something that we, as far as like sort of tactical things that we do. If you haven't gathered from this conversation, we don't use physical discipline with our children. As far as like, if you like corporal punishment, spankings, things like that, we don't do that. So I don't know if that comes as a surprise to you or not. And like I said, I know that's like such a hot button topic, and people who spank are very passionately like feel that it's necessary, and people who don't usually pretty passionately feel it's not. Like I said, we had to take a hard look at our parenting style because we did used to when our kids were a lot smaller, and it was rare, but we did it, and I never felt good about it. I have this sort of philosophy with motherhood, and if it feels wrong in my gut, if my gut tells me this feels wrong, then I really am going to start to question it, because I truly believe our instincts as mothers should drive so much of what we do. So for me, again, I'm going to say something else that's probably going to make people mad, but like, we don't do cry it out with our babies. It doesn't feel good to me in my heart. That's not to say that my babies don't cry and that I don't ever let them cry for any, you know what I mean? But like, we don't put our babies into a crib, leave them, and let them cry. I know I have friends that do, that I love dearly. I love them. I love their children. I have friends that spank their children and friends that don't. We all just sort of do our own thing. And I think that's really important. But for us personally, again, we've seen the actual boots on the ground effects of trauma to the brain of a child who's left and not comforted and things like that. So we've seen sort of the extreme, and obviously that's not what's happening in a typical everyday household when you're letting a baby cry it out or whatever. But like in an orphanage situation where it's sort of like cry it out extinction method essentially, which is where like no one ever comes and you just cry until you pass out or fall asleep or throw up or whatever. We've seen the effects of that on some of our children because that's been their experience. And so we just choose not to do that. And that could be really hard when you're tired and exhausted and you just want some sleep. I totally get it. So that's not a judgment from me on you if you let your kids cry it out. I'm just saying that's not something that we do. I don't even remember why that came up, why we were talking about that. But yeah, so what we try to do is sort of get down to the child's level, talk to them about what they're feeling, not in like this like let's all talk about our feelings like this. You guys know, like I'm kind of like this like loud sarcastic, I'm not really like let's all just sit around and kumbaya and talk about our feelings, but more so like if I see my 4-year-old is just like having a complete meltdown and I can see that he's really angry, I try to get to the bottom of that. So for example, I'm just going to use one of my kids as an example. Jonah, our 4-year-old, he has a very short fuse. He gets angry really fast, and his anger comes a lot of times from any time he feels that he's being laughed at. When he feels embarrassed or humiliated, his response is anger. So if he trips or whatever and it's just goofy and he's not hurt and the other kids laugh, he will get mad. And I think we kind of, you know, people like that, right? I mean, so we as parents are trying to help him calm, take a deep breath, recognize that they are not laughing at you, they're laughing at the situation, and you would laugh too if that was, do you know what I mean? Like, depending on the situation, obviously. But then also having our other kids sort of recognize that, hey, this really negatively affects your brother. Let's try really hard not to do that. So we don't immediately go to like, oh, he's angry, you're going to timeout. We do use timeouts. Absolutely, we do use timeouts. And a lot of times what we do is if a child is just like angry beyond all being able to just talk to them, then they need to go to their room. And it's not like a punishment, like go to your room. It's like a, let's go to your room, which is your quiet space, and you need to sit, you can sit on your bed, you know, for 5 minutes or whatever. And really, we don't usually put a time on it. We say until you're calm and you feel ready to come back down and join us. Because we kind of have a rule that you can be upset, you can be angry, you can be sad. You are allowed to feel your emotions. You're not allowed to put those on everybody else around you, like in a negative way. So if you are just hysterically crying and cannot pull it together, then you need to go to your space where you can have a few minutes, because I need that. I'm a grown woman and I need that sometimes, where I just need to go to my room and pull myself together. And so kids need that too. And so all of our kids, from the youngest to the oldest, I mean babies, will get, you know, sort of like time to go to your room, chill out, scream into a pillow if you need to. Like if you just need to get it out, scream into a pillow. I get that. I respect that. I completely understand that emotion. And so we try to help our kids to, like, they don't need to stuff every emotion. It's okay. You don't have to be happy all the time. It's okay to feel all the feels, but you can't like sit next to me and scream in my ear or kick me or hurt someone else or like that kind of stuff. You can't do that, but you can go to your room and have your time to like pull yourself together. And we usually find, again, we don't set a timer for that or anything. We usually find that once the child, it's usually 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 20 minutes. I mean, sometimes it takes up to an hour if the kid is really, really upset. Then they come back down and they're calm and they're ready to join us. And usually at that point, they're ready to really talk about whatever the root of the issue is, why they were so upset, why they're so sad. And we try to just talk them through it. And all of our kids, you know, we try to make them aware of how their actions are making other people feel. So instead of me just saying like, you guys are making me so angry right now, I will try to tell my children, I feel as though you're being really ungrateful right now. And let me tell you how that feels to me. That really hurts my heart when I feel like I'm going above and beyond to do this thing for you, and your response is that it's not good enough. And you're just like, that really hurts my feelings. And sometimes I'll try to tell them a story about a time when I was a kid and something like that happened. Or I'll try to turn it sort of in a story that like, imagine if this happened, if you did this and then the person reacted this way. I try to give them like little stories of my own childhood or made up stories to help them sort of visualize the scenario in another way, so they can understand how we're feeling, like how I'm feeling as a mom, all of that stuff. So we kind of just, we want them to be like emotionally stable and aware human beings that have empathy for other people, and that do their best to make the right decisions. And one thing that I think I could probably guess that many of us in our generation, this was not modeled for us by our parents. Mom, Dad, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I love you very much, and I understand it's hard. But one of the things that we've tried really hard to do, because both Ciara and I felt like it didn't really happen for us as kids, and we feel like it could have made a difference for us, is that we apologize to our kids. If we mess up, if we get angry for no reason, if we're being really short and mean, and it's like our adult, you know, we're just being ugly, then we will go to our kids and say, we're sorry. I'm sorry that mommy yelled at you guys. I should not have done that. I was upset about this and this, and I'll explain to them, like, I'm not perfect and I'm sorry, and I will apologize to them, ask them to, you know, forgive me and give me some grace. And that helps them too, when they make mistakes and they mess up, to feel like they can come to us and say, like, I made a mistake and I'm asking for your forgiveness and I'm sorry. And I just think that that's such an important thing, to be able to admit a mistake and ask for forgiveness. I find as an adult, it's so rare to find adults that are willing to admit when they've done something wrong. We always just want to blame somebody else, and that's like one of the sort of character things that my husband and I get most annoyed about with our children, is when you call them on something they've done and they're like, oh, but so-and-so, but this, and they try to deflect. We both really want our children to all grow up taking ownership of their actions, apologizing where apologies are needed, because I just think it's really an important character trait in loving people and being good to people around you, is knowing when to say, like, I messed up. And speaking of messing up, but lest you think all of this emotional, fluffy connection and everything is just how things are in my house all the time, and we all just sit around, like I said, holding hands and swaying and talking about our feelings, I lose mine all the time. I have had many experiences where I've been like, especially when I'm sick or pregnant or whatever, like, where I'm just like yelling at my kids, and it's like an out-of-body experience. It's like you're watching yourself from the corner of the room and you're just looking down at yourself, like yelling at your kids, and you're like, what are you doing? Stop it. You're being terrible. And you just can't stop yourself. If you've ever felt that way, I totally get that. People act like they are surprised if I say that I, like, oh, I lost it today and yelled at my kids or whatever. That happens, guys. Like, it just, that's the truth. It just does. I'm a human and I make mistakes and I get angry and I let my anger get the best of me, and I end up, you know, yelling or just being like, that's it, everybody go to their rooms, I can't think, just everybody get out of my sight. You know, I'm a human being, so that absolutely happens. I feel you, I see you, I know your heart, mamas, if you're over there like, but sometimes I just have to put the crying baby down for a minute because I just can't do it. I totally get it. Kids can drive us to the brink. I mean, it's the truth. And when we're not, especially when we're not handling our mental health well, which that's a whole nother video, but especially if you're feeling like you might be struggling with postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, Michelle Pearson here on YouTube does amazing content about mental health and her struggles with postpartum depression. And she also struggled with, what's it called, like antepartum depression? You need to go watch her. I'll leave a link to her channel down below, but she does a lot of great videos about that. Like, guys, this is, and I'm not saying this in a joking way, but like, not handling those things, this is how moms drive into the ocean with a van full of babies, or drown their children in the bathtub. Like, it's not a joke. So if you ever feel like you're having just a really hard time managing your kids beyond what is normal or typical, then absolutely reach out to your OBGYN, midwife, whoever does, you know, primary care, whoever, and talk to them, because there's no shame in getting on medication if you need to or whatever, because there is a point where it's like, okay, this is too much and you need some help. So don't hesitate. But that being said, I do lose it too. I'm not perfect. I've never claimed to be, but hopefully this video gives you a little bit of an insight. Like I said, we try to get a little bit creative and think outside the box, and we're continuing to learn and continuing to do research about how to best connect with our children, and how to love them through their struggles, because as you guys know, if you watch us, we have children that are sort of entering the preteen hormonal, I'm sad and I don't know why phase. And then we've got babies, you know, so we've kind of got things all over the map. And so trying to deal with tantrums from an angry 4-year-old. Rosie's frustrated because she can't share with us what she's feeling, because she just doesn't have the words, and so she's frustrated. And it's just, you know, it can be a whole, some days it can be a perfect storm, and those are usually the days when Ciara comes home from work and I'm like, I'm out of here. So that's why I believe so firmly in like taking self-care and breaks and mom friends and all of that stuff, because motherhood is the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, I've never climbed Everest, but motherhood is the hardest thing I've ever done. And not just keeping them alive, and like I said, keeping them alive and helping them to become happy, productive citizens and, you know, just happy people, good people who treat other people well. That's it though. That's sort of the Cliff Note version of our discipline. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments and I will try to get to them and answer them. Let me know what you want to see for next week's Ask Angie. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As I always say, thank you guys for spending your time with me. It really does mean a lot to me that you would take time out of your day to watch one of my videos, especially one like this. It's really long and just me flapping my gums. So love you guys. Subscribe to our channel if you're not already. Turn on the bell if you've missed all the hoopla. YouTube is now messing with your news feed and what you see in your subscription feed. So turn on the bell if you don't want to miss any future videos. YouTube, get your ish together, please. And I will see you guys again really soon. Bye.